So tired of getting roasted online for this, so I think it's finally time that I sit down and film this fucking video. Hey friends, what is up and welcome back to my channel. As you can tell from the title of today's video, we're going to be covering something a little bit differently. I am sort of known as the girl who hates most of the female characters in some of the most popular books ever written, or ever, I would say, read on YouTube, BookTube, fucking Instagram, you know, the like. I find it very, very hard for especially male authors to write really likable female characters. Although I will say, I do also find it hard for female authors to write female characters because I feel like, just to break it down, my biggest pet peeves are characters who are difficult for the sake of being difficult, or are strong just for the sake of being strong. So they never really give you a backstory on why a character is strong. They're suddenly magically they're strong because they're a woman, or they are, like in my case, Lila Bard is my least favorite character of all time, and it is because she's difficult for the sake of being difficult, but it is supposed to be spun in a way where she is strong and independent and does what she wants to do. And I feel like a lot of the plots in the books, like in Shades of Magic, are kind of spurred on by the fact that Lila is just difficult, and I feel like it was kind of poor writing. So unpopular opinions there, but today I wanted to sit down and talk to you about some of my favorite female characters because contrary to popular belief, I do have quite a few of them. Please stop roasting me online for this. Please stop yelling at me and assuming that I'm not going to like a book because the female main character is shitty. This was actually kind of brought about because two things. I was talking to Angelica and she was talking about a character who I'm going to talk about today that she really liked, and I was like, wow, I really hated her in the beginning, but I grew to like her, which is what I like in all of my characters. And then also G mentioned in chat one day that she didn't think that I'd like Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn series, I think, because there's a really annoying female character that she assumed that I would not like. So I thought I would sit down and tell you guys the female main characters that I did like, because I have 8 or 9 books here of female characters that I did enjoy. The first one that I want to talk about is from one of my new favorite authors and favorite humans on the face of the planet. I actually sat with her. How sassy can I be today? I sat with her on a panel at BookNet Fest, and that would be Nina Moreno. And the character that I'm talking about is Rosa Santos from Don't Date Rosa Santos. This is a library book. I need to get it back because I've had it for 3 months, 4 months, something like that. My library doesn't have late fees or anything like that, so I'm not like, you know, toeing the line here with that. But I fucking loved Rosa. Rosa is smart and funny and loves to cook and loves to eat. But the thing that I really like about her is her family is from Cuba originally. So she's Cuban American, and her family doesn't talk about Cuba. They don't, you know, they have like these little rituals and they have a lot of secrets between her mom and her grandma. She lives with her grandma and her mom's kind of like, you know, floating about living this like crazy life doing what she wants to do. And Rosa wants to know more. She wants to know more about their culture. She wants to know more about like what life was like there. She wants to visit. And she's trying to basically go to school in Cuba on like a grant kind of fellowship, like visiting kind of thing. And it falls through, but she still tries her best to make it work. And she's really trying to bridge the gap between where her family is from and then the strained relationship she has with like her mother and, you know, the kind of like, I don't want to say like culturally shallow relationship that she sort of has with her grandma at the same time. And I love her in this book. She is defiant in a way that makes sense. You know, she has this goal and she tries her best to be respectful of the space that her grandma kind of commands. And I fucking loved it. I think that she is a phenomenal, phenomenal character. And I absolutely love that Nina wrote a character like this. And I'm assuming it is because, you know, a lot of, I would say, Rosa, I could see in Nina at the same time. The next character I want to talk about is a character that I recently discovered and fell absolutely head over heels in love with. And that would be Asha from A Shadow of What Was Lost by James Isington. I love Asha. Asha is a very, like in the beginning of the book, she seems kind of cookie cutter, more, I would say, probably through the first half of this book, she seems very like stereotypical female warrior mage kind of character. But the shit that happens to Asha in these books would absolutely break someone, even in a book. Like I feel like she could have been used as a plot device where she just kind of like wastes away. Basically what happens to Asha, there's a really, really traumatic event, which I don't really want to talk about. And instead of breaking her, it empowers her. And I fucking love that. I am definitely one of those people who has been through quite a few things in their life that could have really torn me down and made me basically a shell of a human, and I tried to push through that, and I really see that in Asha. Like I said, I don't necessarily want to say what happened to her, but she does become a very giving, very caring, very loving person, and despite what happens to her, she works with the best of the circumstances that she has, and I fucking love that, because life doesn't stop when something happens to you like that, and I think it's very realistic, and I'm incredibly impressed that a male author wrote a character that I love so incredibly much, but I think that she just has a lot of depth as well. And the third one comes out soon. I still have it. It's in the mail on the way to me now. But I think that she has one of the best character arcs in a story that I've ever read. I know a lot of you guys have picked up this series because of me recently, and I'm so happy to say that like almost every single person, if not every single person, has absolutely loved it. And I would say that Asha is definitely my favorite character other than Caden throughout the entire series. Like I said, I think she has the most character development. I think that she is the most well written in the sense of what would realistically happen, because I think trauma goes one way or the other. You either shut down or you let it empower you, and I absolutely love that instead of letting it shut her down and her becoming like the sad broken character that I think would have really played into this book, James chose to make her a very empowered character and a very pivotal character in the story as well. I can't wait to read the third one. This is obviously the first one. I have read the second one, but I can't wait to see what happens to her and like the overall arc that he chooses to give her, because like the ending of the second one literally, look me in the eyes, literally fucking ruined me. So I cannot wait for the third one to see what happens to her. Now, the next character I'm going to talk about, I actually didn't like when I first met. And I want to use this book as an example of how I think characters should be written and character growth. And that would be Skyward by Brandon Sanderson. First off, Spensa has the dumbest name I've ever heard of a character ever, and I really don't like it, but she does grow on you. Spensa is the daughter of a man who used to be like a pilot. Are they called pilots if they're in space? I don't know. Who is basically killed by his people because he supposedly abandons them. And so her and her mother and her grandma are all cast out of society. Obviously they can't leave, but they're not able to work or provide for their family. And Spensa is definitely a product of her environment. So she, at the beginning of the book, is very argumentative. She's very on edge. She wants to fight people. She wants to prove herself. She doesn't want to take anybody's shit. And I hated that because the beginning of the book, it came off as very hard-headed. Throughout the book, however, she is given, I would say, like, resources, and she's given information, and she's given like these opportunities to grow and change, and my God, does she grow and change. She's one of my favorite female characters of all time. I think Brandon does a fantastic job writing her, because I feel like that's how people are. So the average person or anybody, when they are stubborn or they have decided this is how life is and this is how I think and no one can change my mind kind of thing, it goes one of two ways. You either accept that that's who you are and you don't change, or you take the circumstances that you're given, the information that you're given, the opportunities that you're given, and you grow and change from that. And that's definitely, I think, what happened with Spensa. I think that she is honestly a phenomenal character. The character that she is in the beginning and the character that she is in the end are definitely day and night, and I absolutely fucking love her. If you want a strong character, if you want a lot of character growth, I think this is definitely the book for you. It was absolutely fantastic. One of my favorite reads of the year. I gave it 5 stars. First Brandon Sanderson book I've read front to back. I've read bits of Elantris, but I can definitely see, even in because this is a YA book, even in the YA format, why people absolutely love his characters and his stories and just like the plots and the twists and turns and stuff. I think you still see a lot of that in here, because if you're a good writer, you're a good writer. It doesn't matter the age group or genre that you are writing. And this is a science fiction novel as opposed to fantasy, which he normally writes. The next book I want to talk about is a book that I've talked about a lot on my channel, but I'm going to talk about it today for reasons that I have not covered, and that would be Kings of the Wild by Nicholas Eames. And maybe you're like, but Jess, what female character is this? Because every time I talk about this book, all I talk about is the band. So like Clay and Golden Gabe and Moog, and you know, I get it, okay? I get it. But there is a character in this book called Larkspur. I think I'm pronouncing that right. She is a badass winged, like God, basically, and I fucking love her. So Nicholas writes fantastic characters. He writes characters that you grow to love. He writes characters that you grow to really care about. But the thing about her, and the thing that I really like about the story that Nick wrote, is at one point in time, she is hunting people in the band. That's like how you're introduced to her. She's basically a fucking bad guy, and she's a badass at the same time. And she really wrecks like everybody when she shows up. But there is a bit of a head injury and Larkspur starts to kind of lose her memory, and then later on she sort of starts to get it back. But watching the way that she grows and changes throughout the story is really interesting. My favorite part is, though, when she gets her memory back, it doesn't change who she is. She doesn't like revert back to who she used to be. She kind of like melds the two together, and I think that's really pivotal in the story as well. And I fucking love her. Like, she is definitely a gluttonous character for me because she is so badass, because she is so basically evil at the beginning of the book, but then you get to see like I don't want to say softer side to her because I wouldn't consider her soft at all, but she's definitely one of those characters that is just fun to read, and I don't feel like she's annoying, and I don't feel like she's, you know, written in a way like a male author would write a female character. I think Nick does toe the line really, really well with that. His other book, Bloody Rose, the second one to this one, has even more amazing female characters in it, but I wanted to focus on her for this one. But just know that whole second book is mostly female characters with like a couple of like male like add-on characters, and I really, really liked that, and I think that he did those characters really well as well. I think that Rose from Bloody Rose is fantastic. She does battle a drug addiction, and she has, you know, a child that she's trying to take care of, and it was very realistic, and to see all of those characters grow and change. And I love Nick's female characters in general, but I did definitely want to talk about Larkspur. I feel like a lot of people will either really love or really hate her, but I really, really loved her. Now, the next book I want to talk about is a book that I cannot recommend to more people than I already have, but a lot of people who read this find this book either very polarizing and they fucking love it, or they hate it, and if you hate it, you're wrong. I'm sorry. I said it. And that would be Sawkill Girls by Claire Legrand. Now, I haven't really enjoyed anything else that Claire Legrand has written, but I think this book hit so many points for me. There's so much representation in this book. There's so much like not heavy-handed feminism in this book, and because I'm not like a huge fan of feminism, I think the overall idea of it is amazing, but I feel like it kind of gets out of hand like really quickly. But I think that this book and their like Claire's brand of feminism and Claire's brand of like empowering other women, I think it's perfect. And that's why I recommend it to a lot of people, because I think it does real feminism really, really well. And I think that my favorite part of this, however, is all of the characters. So we have Marion, Zoe, and Val, and all the characters are very, very different. And I could speak about all of them, but I'll just talk about it in an overall general review of this book, because I think that all the characters are very strong, but I think how they work together is my favorite part. But my favorite part of this book is actually the line between building up other women and holding other women accountable. And that is something that I think a lot of stories really lack. I think a lot of stories do have a lot of girl hate. Like, I really am not a fan of girl hate in books. I'm not a fan of girl hate in real life. I think that we should be building each other up. I think that we've been kind of conditioned to view ourselves against other people in comparison, and I don't think that that's healthy, and that's what I love about this book. So this book is definitely one of those books, and all the characters in this book as well, even the male characters, I think, are there to kind of teach you that you should be building each other up, you should be loving each other, but you should also be learning that there are consequences to actions that you make. There's a character in this book, I'm not going to say who, and that's kind of why I'm like limiting what I'm saying about what I like about each of these characters, because I don't want to give the story away. But there's a character in this book who does something really vile and really, I would think, unforgivable, but they learn how to grow and change and accept that, and I fucking love this book. I literally, if you have a 12-year-old girl in your life, or even like a 12-year-old boy in your life, I think that this is a very important book to read. I think the themes in it are phenomenal. I don't care if you don't like it. I fucking love this book, and I love every single character in this book. I can't, oh God, I cannot get enough of this. I've read it twice already, and it's been a long time since I've reread like a book ever. Now, the next book I'm going to talk about is another book that I have spoken about a few times on my channel, but I feel the need to sit down and talk about this character directly, and it'd be The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden. You guys know I absolutely love this series. My roommate's actually listening to the audiobook right now and really hating it, so you want to read this on my recommendation, get the physical copy and make your way through it that way. Basically, this follows our main character, Vasya, and she lives in a really, really snowy town in Moscow. And her mom, I was her dad's wife, her mom passes away, and her dad brings home basically her new stepmom. And in the village they live in, they believe in basically these little gods. So gods are only as powerful as the belief that people have in them. That's like a ongoing running theme in many, many things. If you watch any kind of anime, if you're into like other religions and stuff, like that's a very strong running theme. The reason why that's so detrimental is Vasya does believe in these gods and she is able to see them, and that plays a very integral part in the rest of the story in all three books. Like the fact that she's able to commune with them, to talk with them, to strengthen them. The reason why I love this, like love her so much and love this story so much, is Vasya is very much so a true character. She is who she is. You get to see her triumphs, you get to see her absolute fucking failures throughout this book as well, and it's done in a way where you don't pity her. You know, like as you're reading it, that that's growth, that that's change, that's fucking life. And that's what I really like about the story, is even though it is, you know, sort of fantastical, it is obviously a work of fiction, and there are like gods and demons and things like that in the story. It is very much so, I think, a story about life and living and finding yourself. And I think another reason why I sort of really like Vasya as a character is a lot of the time she is trying to basically go incognito as a boy throughout the story while trying to maintain her femininity and debating like what makes her a woman and what makes her truly feminine, and like falling in love and falling out of love and going through things and maintaining who she is. And she's just such a strong, fantastic, realistic, like her story is so brutal and I fucking love it. Like I need everybody to read this because I need to talk to everybody about it. That's how much I absolutely love her. Now the next book I have here is actually a book that flew under my radar for quite a long time, and I ended up falling in love with the two main characters, Melina and Jasmina. They are twins, and it would be Wicked Like a Wildfire by Lena Popovic. This book is so underrated. Basically, all the women in this book, or in their family, in Melina and Jasmina's family, are able to do something called the gleam. Sometimes it can be that they see, you know, sounds as art, or it can be that they are able to bloom flowers. Basically, they have some sort of magic. And the reason why I really, really loved this story and really, really loved the characters is the, I would say, sisterly bond between them, but also kind of what brings them to their sisterly bond. So their mother is very secretive. There are a lot of things that she's like, you know, they live in a very small seaside town, which lends, I think, to the richness of the story at the same time. But they are kind of forbidden to do a lot of things because their mom doesn't want to be outed for having the abilities that they have, because obviously, like I said, it is a smaller town and people don't tend to react positively to things like that. But the sisters do decide to one day just do what they want to do. Like in secret, they often use their gleam. But what happens is a woman shows up into town and basically really hurts their mom. And they're left to kind of figure everything out on their own. And there's like a huge plot that is kind of discovered. But throughout the story, they find like their strength at the same time, but also their strength together. And I think that really appeals to me. I do like sisterly stories. I like stories with very, very close sisters in them. I think that they're some of my favorites to read because they are, I don't know, once again, realistic. I guess I like realistic female characters, but they go through a lot of shit together, and it's a lot of give and take. It's a lot of sacrifices. It's a lot of growing as your own person, then also growing as basically an extension of somebody else, because they are twins. And as the story keeps going and as more and more is like explained to you about what's happening to them, you get to go on this great journey with them. And I feel like the way that they handle things is very realistic. There's a lot of breakdowns. There's a lot of love. There's a lot of, you know, heartbreak throughout the story as well. And definitely an underrated book. I think that the story is fantastic. I think the characters are fantastic. And I think that the overall setting of the book is also fantastic. So I feel like more people should be reading this, and I feel like more people should be talking about this book as well. Now, who would I be if I didn't talk about this book, A Big Ship at the Edge of the Universe? You guys know I'm not going to linger here for too long. I absolutely love Boots, Nyla, and Orna from this series. I think that they are some of, really any of the women in this book. I think Alex did an amazing, amazing job writing characters. They are fantastic with their characters. So Boots is like an older, kind of washed up treasure hunter. Nyla is a very stubborn, very spoiled brat race car driver, and Orna is from a very, very brutal background, and it definitely does shape who she is. The reason why I love this book so much is these characters, when you're first introduced to them, or when they are really forced to interact with each other at the beginning of the book, they fucking hate each other. And you get to see like this slow progression of learning who is worth your time and who is worth investing in as a friend. And I think that's why I love this book so much. As somebody who holds my friendships almost closer than I hold like a familial friendship or like a familial relationship, like, you know, with like, I mean, I don't talk to my birth parents. I don't talk to any of my 8 siblings. I don't talk to, you know, a lot of people in my life for various reasons. And as somebody who finds comfort and really feels like my friends are my family, like they are my chosen family, this story and the characters that Alex writes, they just do it fantastically. And you grow to love and you grow to care about them and you grow to want to see them succeed. And that is one of my favorite things about this book, is you get to kind of take that journey with them and you get to see bits, like bit by bit, how they decide that that person is worth it. That person is worth fighting for. That person is worth almost dying for. And I fucking love this book. I'm not going to stay here for too long because I've talked about this book a lot, like a lot. And you know, it's one of my favorite series. So I'm not going to stay here for too long, but definitely read it if you have not. Now, the next book I want to talk about is a book that I have once again talked about on my channel, but I need to talk about it here again, and it'll be Sleeping Giants by Sylvain Neuvel. Pretty sure my cover's not backwards, but we're just going to ignore that. The character that I want to talk about for this book is actually Kara. Kara is, if you're not familiar with the story, there is a woman named Rose, or a girl named Rose, and on her birthday she falls into a hole and lands into the hand of a giant robot. And she is, when she's an adult, placed with the task of basically assembling that giant robot because they have found more and more parts. This is a 3-part series. There are 3 books, a trilogy, I guess. But the character that really appealed to me in this book is actually Kara. And for many, many reasons. Kara is a very broken character. She is in the military. She is one of the military personnel that works directly with Rose on reassembling the robot and learning how to kind of like use the robot. She becomes sort of a pilot for it. The reason why I really like Rose is, for me, or not Rose, but Kara. The reason why I really like Kara is because for me, she goes through so fucking much in this series. Like, if you haven't read it, I don't want to give too much away, but there are things to do with children. There are things to do with sacrifice. There are things to do with putting aside who you are, or who you thought you were, I guess, to become who you need to be. And the sense of duty and the sense of commitment and family and, you know, like the betterment of society. And I loved her as the character that presented that in the story. I think that she, for me, is such a strong character because, once again, despite the things that happen to her, you get to see her mourn, you get to see her, you know, pick up the pieces, but she does continue to pick up the pieces. It's going to be kind of hard to talk about her without really giving away a lot of the story, but just know that I think that she is one of the strongest female characters I've ever read in a book, and she definitely made me fall in love with this series. Like, I have her dog tags. Like, I pre-ordered the 2nd book and was like, I'm pre-ordering this because I want Kara's dog tags. That's how much I loved her. And definitely, I think that for me, she just is really sassy and strong and independent, and it's like, it's so natural and normal, and that's just who she is, and it didn't feel forced. And I feel like Sylvain did a really good job of like portraying that, and that's why I love her so absolutely much. As well as like I said, like when life gets really shitty, you choose to either keep going or you choose to shut down, and Kara was like, fuck this, and kept going. And I love this series, and I know a lot of people who've read it have absolutely liked it, which makes me, once again, incredibly happy that you guys are reading recommendations from me and really enjoying them. And if you haven't read this, I would recommend it because Kara is a fantastic character. I mean, so's Rose, so's Vincent. Most of the characters in this series are just phenomenal. Like, even the interviewer. The interviewer is like my favorite character throughout the entire thing. So all of the characters I think are really strong, but especially Kara. Kara has a very special place in like my heart. Alright guys, so I think I need to cut this video off because it's saying right now that I'm at 26 minutes of filming, which means once I cut it down, it'll probably be around 20, and I think that's a good place to stop. So I obviously have more female characters that I could talk about, but I just wanted to talk about, if you're looking for a good female character, and maybe you're like me and you're annoyed that you can't really find one, I bring to you my list. But thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know down below your favorite female characters. I love you so much, and I will see you in my next video.